But here's the thing, in the presence of insulin, you cannot lose weight. It's such a dominating hormone, it will block growth hormone. So it's the hormone that makes you fat. It's the hormone that gives you the gut. If you see someone with a fat gut, they have too much insulin. 5 meals a day and they're small and they're spread out, or you're snacking between meals, you're going to spike insulin. We don't want to do that. That's going to create a big problem for you. So removing the snacking is vital.
Jeez, bro, you need to cut down on that insulin, real talk. Now you're really on a high insulin diet, man. What up, it's Dane. In this video, I'm going to be telling you everything that most people are not telling you when it comes to fat loss, and especially when it comes to insulin. So you've probably heard that, don't eat high glycemic carbohydrates, or don't eat this and don't eat that because it's going to spike your blood sugar or it's going to spike your insulin, and therefore you cannot lose any fat whatsoever. So let me begin by telling you the truth, and just watch all this and you can be the judge. So the reason I'm making this video is because there are a few videos out there with almost 1 million views and the information is completely incorrect and outdated. For example, take Eric Berg. He says someone that has a fat gut has too much insulin. What kind of sense does this make at all? Now, I'm usually not the type of person to shit on people or anything like that. I'm just making this video to correct him, because this, even though he's some doctor and I'm not even a doctor, this is pure information. One thing as well, he never even talked about calorie deficit. Okay, so let me begin by actually telling you what insulin does. Basically, what it is just a hormone that regulates the sugar in your blood. So basically what happens when you eat a nice juicy meal with loads of carbs, the carbs are basically broken down into glucose. The glucose travels through the blood, and then the pancreas senses a rising in the glucose, and that spikes the insulin. So insulin basically acts as the gateway, therefore it can enter your fat cells, your muscle and your liver. So when you eat a nice juicy meal, the insulin goes up as well as the blood glucose goes up, and then when you finish eating that meal, it drops a little bit, then the same thing happens again and again. But here's the thing. Insulin doesn't just regulate blood sugar. Number one, it stimulates your muscles to build new protein through a process called protein synthesis. And now here's where everyone jumps to conclusions. Number one, it inhibits lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat. And number two, it stimulates lipogenesis, which basically is the creation of fat. So here's why insulin has received its bad boy reputation. So they think a high carbohydrate diet equals high insulin, and when it equals high insulin, remember I talked about the lipolysis, the breakdown of fat is inhibited, plus the creation of fat is stimulated as well, the lipogenesis, and therefore that leads to fat gain, and therefore people think that's why obesity epidemic has struck or some shit. And also the same thing occurs when they think, oh, the low carbohydrate diet is superior because insulin levels aren't spiked regularly throughout the day as if you had a high carbohydrate diet. Okay, so the following is real important to listen to. Fat gain will only occur when lipogenesis, remember the creation of fat, exceeds lipolysis, the breakdown of fat. So here's exactly what happens when you eat a meal, right? So lipogenesis exceeds lipolysis, so it's like that, you're gaining fat, but then most people don't actually realize after the meal, when you're in a so-called little bit faster state, when you're not constantly eating, then lipolysis, the breakdown of fat, exceeds the creation of fat. So basically it evens out. But people still don't understand the following. When your energy intake is lower than your energy expenditure, you will lose weight, regardless if you're eating 5,000 carbs a day, or maybe that's an exaggeration. So here's the biggest myth. Carbohydrates drives insulin, which in turn drives fat storage. But the real reality is that, again, no one's telling you about, is that your body can literally synthesize and store fat even if your insulin levels are real low. There's a hormone in your fat cells called hormone sensitive lipase. I'm just going to refer to it HSL. Now this hormone is the holy grail hormone, man. It helps to break down fat. But insulin, the bad guy, man, it suppresses the HSL from breaking down this fat. But the reality is not just carbohydrates that suppresses this HSL hormone, it is also fat. For example, let's do this. Let's say you eat 10,000 calories, whatever, of just fat, zero carbohydrates, right? So a low carb diet that a lot of people propose is that magic, good old snowflake that. Let's say you do that. Now you do that and you're expecting fat loss, right? However, like I said before, fat suppresses the HSO hormone, which helps break down fat. So therefore, as always, a calorie deficit is needed for some fat loss. So the next biggest myth, and this is probably one of the biggest of them all, is that insulin will make you hungry. Now, what people really don't understand is that insulin is actually the opposite of that. It will make you feel full and suppress your damn appetite. And clearly linking into this is that people think carbs are bad. Like, a lot of people ask me this question, are carbs bad? Are they not bad? Because people think that carbs are the primary driver to drive or spike insulin, whereas they don't really realize how much protein actually spikes insulin as well. In fact, all that said, protein can actually secrete insulin probably the same amount as carbohydrates. What most people don't realize is that an insulin response is positively and very closely associated with appetite suppression. So we know that protein secretes a lot of insulin, right? And this clearly shows that insulin is not really correlated with blood sugar levels as most people think. They think it's very closely related. So one of the reasons why protein actually secretes a lot of insulin is because one of the amino acids, leucine, the one that we all hear about, what that basically does is that stimulates the pancreas to produce more insulin. So if you really want to keep your insulin levels low, then surely you're going to have to eat a high protein diet. Or no, actually you will have to keep that low as well, because that secretes a lot of insulin. So you're going to have a low carb, low protein and a really high fat diet. Now, I'm not sure many people recommend these diets. In fact, if you're trying to maintain muscle mass as well while losing some fat, then you certainly don't want to do that. And again, another stupid thing is people think that refined carbohydrates are bad. It spikes your insulin levels all the time. But again, like I've been talking about, does a protein do the same thing? What really comes down to is this, is the energy density of the foods. People think that, oh, carbohydrates really bad. Instead, they didn't think, okay, a Mars bar, the energy density is very high, 300 calories in a small package, compared to broccoli that's like 70 calories in a massive package, and that produces very high levels of satiety, when most of the time these refined carbohydrates don't. The real reality and fact is that insulin spikes are not really that bad after all, because as I've been saying, protein causes insulin spikes as well, and guess what, that suppresses the appetite and also helps with weight loss. But here's the massive problem. Like I said before, people associate insulin spikes with blood glucose and they confuse the two. So rapid rises in blood sugar, so up and down can contribute to hunger. Because rapid rises in blood glucose also increase rapid rises in insulin, people just correlate both of these and they blame the high glycemic carbohydrate. For example, you might have heard something like, don't eat white rice, eat brown rice instead because it's low glycemic, it's not going to spike your insulin. Okay, so here's another hormone to stop you moaning. Alright, that was pretty bad. So the good old magic hormone we're talking about here is AMYLIN. It's co-secreted with insulin in the pancreas, and guess what it does? It stimulates lipolysis, the breakdown of fat, which is what we want, and it also decreases your appetite. Again, this is debunking a common myth that lowering your insulin levels will increase your appetite, when actually it's the complete reverse. Insulin is very important for satiety. Protein increases insulin secretion, however, it doesn't promote fat or weight gain. So if like this carbohydrates kind of insulin hypothesis, all this kind of good stuff, we would think that, okay, foods that produce a lot of insulin, so insulin anemic foods, if I can say that, would produce a lot of weight gain or fat gain. Alright, here's the deal. Most people do not realize that dairy foods actually increases insulin a shit ton, while the levels of blood glucose are very low. For example, full fat milk has a glycemic index of, let's say, I think 39, and ice cream about 51, compared to white bread, which is 100. So dairy foods are most of the time low glycemic. So these dairy products actually produce a much greater insulin response than white bread, despite actually having quite the same level of carbohydrates. Again, all of these dairy products produced lower levels of blood sugar compared to the white bread, even though the insulin secretion was way over white bread. You see what I'm saying? Again, people confuse the insulin secretion with the blood glucose levels. So again, why is this dairy products or these dairy foods stimulating so much insulin? The reason being is because of the amino acids. Again, leucine, valine and isoleucine. And like we said, leucine will stimulate your pancreas to produce more insulin. Okay, so let's use a real life example of this insulin / carbohydrate hypothesis of causing obesity epidemic. I can't even take this seriously, man. Okay, so let's use a real life example so that you can understand this. And this might be you, so bear with me and watch out. So if you're an individual that has a lot of dairy, so loads of milk, you're going on OMAD, loads of cheese, loads of yogurt, all these kind of good dairy products, some eggs in there. Basically you have dairy almost in every single meal, which basically means, okay, you're gonna have a lot of insulin flowing around your body, right? Because as we know, insulinemic, meaning, and I've already spoken about this how many single times, basically it promotes a lot of insulin in your body. Now if this was really the case, are you fat? And definitely you should be obese by now. Obviously the carbohydrate insulin hypothesis will say something like this. You should definitely be obese by now, because fat people have a lot of insulin, right? So this is complete bullshit, because I'm sure some of you out there that are watching this now are skinny and they have a lot of dairy products. And not only this, man, the worst of all is that those people that think insulin will make you hungry throughout the day, and I guarantee you're probably not starving. People don't realize as well is that insulin actually enhances the process of glucose uptake in the cells, but it's definitely not required for it. Okay, to summarize all of this up is that high carbohydrate diets really bad. They lead to high insulin. This high insulin actually leads to a decrease in lipolysis, which is, remember, the breakdown of fat, and this also actually stimulates the creation of fat, lipogenesis. So this is all real bad. Obviously not, it's the common belief. But most people, they don't even realize, they don't take into account the enzyme and the fat cells. Remember that hormone sensitive lipase, the HSL, this is responsible for the breakdown of fat. Now insulin suppresses this, so this must be bad because no fat has been broken down. However, little do people know that fat does the exact same thing. It suppresses, if you eat a lot of fat, it will suppress the HSL hormone too. So this means you can't break down any fat, so you're just going to gain fat. So they don't take that into account as well. So if you had to do let's say high protein diet, low carb diet, and a lot of fat, and you eat excess of calories, you will still gain fat. As well as this, people don't take in remember the hormone AMYLIN, which is co-secreted with insulin in your pancreas, and this increases lipolysis, the breakdown of fat, and decreases your appetite. Now let's get on to like the third myth or some shit which people believe, is that insulin is very closely correlated with your blood sugar. And remember, blood sugar, when it goes up and down, and this means, remember, it's close to your insulin levels, when it goes up and down, you get hungrier and hungrier. This is not the case, as we've seen the insulinemic, the dairy products, they spike and they secrete a lot of insulin, but the amount of blood glucose that's raised or increased is not that high. So that's that. Insulin is not as bad as people think it is. It's not a bad reputation. It's a hormone for satiety. It's important. So that's that. My best advice for you, instead of this bullshit videos about insulin, it's a bad hormone, people with a fat stomach, this means they have high insulin, let me tell you how to lose weight by doing intermittent fasting. Just because you're fasting for 20 hours, this means you're going to be burning fat in that range, which you probably are. But if you eat an excess of calories, guess what? That shit doesn't matter. So that's that. Calorie deficit, and stick to the diet that you can sustain. And just before I end this video, I'm going to make this clear that I'm not shitting on anyone. Although the Eric Berg guy, he did actually display some incorrect information, so I thought it's just my role, my duty just to display the right information to people, and that's that. So if you're the person that consumes a lot of insulin and you're not even fat, let me know down below, because as we all know, this is all bullshit. So stay positive, stay smiling, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.
No, there ain't no stopping us.